So, Dr. Robert E. Farrell has received his Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Ohio State University, his MBA from Western New England College, and his Doctor of Engineering from the University of Massachusetts. For nearly 20 years, Dr. Farrell worked in the plastics industry, designing industrial machines for which he holds 6 patents. 16 years ago, Dr. Farrell gave up his position as vice president to become a professor at Penn State University, where he helped start a plastics engineering technology program. Today, that program is recognized as one of the best in the country. He recently retired from Penn State University as associate professor emeritus, and for most of his life, Dr. Farrell has had a big interest in ufology. And over 10 years ago, he began doing serious research for his novel Alien Log. His book is unique in what it offers readers a nuts and bolts approach encompassing many aspects of ufology. So what we're going to do is bring him on here tonight, and we'll talk to him about all this. And listen, nobody is impressed by this UFO report that came out. Nobody is. I got folks lined up to talk to about that this week, and it's like we're talking about all kinds of other stuff too, because the report just really sucks. So all right, let's do this. Let's see if we can get him on. Everything seems to be right, so we should be good. We'll see. And we did not do a sound check tonight, and there was an update, so I hope everything works out well. We'll see. It's a binging. I don't know why it's binging. It's not supposed to. Good evening, Dr. Farrell. How are you tonight?
Good. Are we visual or just audio?
Just audio's fine. It's up to you. Either way.
Okay, I've got a fuzzy connection in your microphone or something.
Yeah,
How do I sound?
I hear that too. I don't know what that is though.
Can you hear me all right?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm not using a headset or anything. I'm just using my laptop.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's probably what it is then. No, we'll get through it. We're fine. So
okay.
Yeah. So we're live, and I welcome you back to Late Night in the Midlands. So what have you been up to? Now you got a new book out.
Yeah, actually several books.
Several. Oh.
I write both science fiction and nonfiction, and I began lecturing on this topic at least 10 years ago. My first lecture was called "The Science Behind Alien Encounters," and I did it for 2 or 3 years. It was so well received that I decided to put it into print. And in fact, I think I launched that first edition the last time you and I talked, which was, I think, 9 years ago, wasn't it?
Is that the last time we spoke? 9 years ago? Wow.
I think so. 2012, maybe.
Holy smokes. See, folks?
I know. So a lot has happened. I'm a little grayer now. And,
me too.
Older, but I'm doing okay.
Yeah? Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I'm a little grayer too. So it's happening to all of us.
And that's true. So anyway, just today, actually a couple of days ago, I posted the revised version of The Science Behind Alien Encounters. It's about twice the size of the original. And starting right now, for the next 5 days, people can go to Amazon and download an ebook copy for free if they're interested. And the book covers a whole gamut of subjects related to ufology, and maybe we'll talk about some of them tonight. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. And so I'm not very impressed with the whole report that came out, and I know you're probably not either. It doesn't seem anybody is.
What report?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's exactly what report? I mean, nothing in there. I mean, it's just they're still lying to us.
Well, they are, and I sympathize with them, because I wouldn't want to be in that position. To be caught with the goods, and then somehow you have to lie your way out of it.
Yeah.
I've been going over in my mind for the last few days how I would respond if I were them. You know, a few scenarios. But the best scenario of all is the one they actually took. And that is say, well, we got to do some more investigation, so we can't tell you anything right now.
Yeah, the good thing that did come out of this is at least there's been attention brought to it, and more attention, and they at least confirmed that, you know, people like you and I aren't nuts, as maybe we would have been considered some time ago. I mean, that's the good that come out of it, but I mean, I didn't care what people thought anyways. I knew. Yeah. So.
Well, but you know, this is the third time we've gone through this. When maybe you could say the fourth time. You know, in 1947, when the Roswell incident occurred, initially they were very open about finding crashed UFO, but that changed very quickly, as you recall, and they buttoned it up for several years until Stanton Friedman broke it loose, I think, in the 70s.
Yeah.
But they kept that one, tied down for quite a while, and then came up with other excuses. But I think the thing that really started this problem with the government acknowledging UFOs started back in '52 when there was that major flap over Washington. And in fact, I've seen photographs of the newspaper that had pictures of UFOs right over the Capitol, taken in April of 1952. And that, I think, really shook up the government, because if you remember, back in that time, we were in a Cold War with Russia, almost a hot war.
Yeah.
And they were really concerned that people might be starting to call in a lot of UFO reports, because that's the only way you could communicate. They didn't have internet. And so that would clog the lines and be kind of a false flag thing that would allow Russia to actually attack us. And so that's when they commissioned the Robertson panel, which is a bunch of scientists headed by Dr. Robertson, to study the issue. And in 1953, they came out with their report. And their suggestion was basically, you should downplay it and try and do whatever you can to get people disinterested in even talking about UFOs. You know, make them seem like they're crazy, and get the media involved, newspapers, radio, television, to go out there and make people look crazy when they said they saw a UFO. And they even got scientists involved, you know, to go out and talk to somebody who had a sighting and explain it away as swamp gas, or they saw Venus. And they formed actually policies from that kind of put a gag on the military, even the civilian pilots, that you weren't supposed to talk about it if you saw a UFO. And so that was the first time. Of course, even during that time, they were meanwhile conducting the Project Blue Book. And when the Robertson report came out, they downplayed the Blue Book project, where they were actually doing serious research into UFO. But they kind of sculpted all that and just kind of made it a data collection type thing. And then in 1969, that project ended. And then what they said was, well, you know, we've studied this and they aren't a threat, so we're not going to spend any more money on it, you know?
Yeah.
Nothing to see here. Go along, move along.
Yeah,
but so here we are today, same thing, except we've got more stuff to look at now. You know, we got close-up pictures of these things. At least eventually we will. I haven't seen any, but maybe in their top secret papers that they published, that you could actually see something.
Right. So what do you suppose? I mean, like you said, all these things that have happened through time, and they've denied them, and now all of a sudden they're okay, you know, with putting this out there. Why do you suppose that is? What happened that they felt they needed to do this?
Well, I don't think they're okay with putting it out, because if they were honest, they would really have told us what it was. I mean, it's pretty obvious to anybody who's studied this field that these are alien craft. You know, one scenario that went through my mind was, okay, people, we got some pictures here, and we recognize that it's really advanced technology, and it's an alien technology because we don't have it, but we don't know what country has it. And of course, they would hesitate to say that it's alien out of this planet. They would just say it's alien in the sense that foreign. And so that would be one scenario. But then you have, that raises a lot more questions. Another scenario would say, well, okay, folks, you know, we've been trying to keep this a secret, but we have developed this technology and it's fantastic, but we can't talk about it. Well, that
Yeah.
would raise another question. Like, well, if you got the ability to have a craft to go from one point to 60 miles further away in 6 seconds, when can I get on a commercial aircraft to fly to London in about 3 minutes, you know? And so
Yeah.
that wouldn't be a good answer then for them to claim that they had the technology. So the best thing they can do now is say, well, it's there. We don't understand it. We got to study it some more. And
Well,
maybe they're hoping that people will forget about it and it'll go away.
yeah, well, normally when something leaks out like that, they just make a mockery of whoever leaks it out and almost make them look like they're absolutely nuts. Like they don't even,
Yeah.
if there is a paper trail, they make it disappear.
Well, that was the offshoot of the Robertson panel. That was the actual policy that they put in place, but the Air Force adopted it, and basically all the military adopted that policy. And they did a good job at it because, when I talk to people about UFOs, you can see their eyes roll a little bit, and unless they're really curious and interested in finding out. So, but I have to say, I've been lecturing about this at least 10 years. I've never had anybody heckle. The most interesting, when I first started lecturing, my first gig, you might say, was down in Beaumont, Texas, at a university. And there was maybe 150 people in the audience. And it was one of the first times I actually did my lecture on the science behind alien encounters. And the next day in the newspaper, apparently there had been a reporter in the audience, and he had interviewed some people. And so he put in the remark that one lady had. She says, well, I think this whole thing is the work of the devil. Well, I didn't have an answer for that at that time, but in 2005, I went to the X conference, which was held outside of D.C. And the keynote speaker was Monsignor Corrado Balducci from the Vatican. It was kind of interesting they'd have someone like that there.
Yeah.
But actually, he was a very appropriate person because his expertise was work with people who thought they were possessed by the devil and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he had a lot of experience with that. But he was the keynote speaker, and essentially his job had been assigned to him for several years to go out in the public, because the Catholic Church was really trying to get people kind of eased into the idea that there might be extraterrestrial people out there. And so Balducci was on Rome Radio several times talking about extraterrestrial people and intelligence. And so anyway, so he had an answer when somebody in the audience says, don't you think this is the work of the devil? He said, no, God would never allow the devil to exhibit this kind of beautiful presence, he said. So
Okay, well, maybe not. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, when I think of biblical stuff, these figures within the Bible that are spoke about, I think some of them are extraterrestrials, to be honest with you. Some people don't like to hear that, but
Well, I'm not a student of the Bible, but I know and have heard that there's nothing in the Bible that excludes the possibility of other intelligence in the universe. And,
Right.
and the other thing, I think another bottom line that I remember from Balducci was when somebody confronts me with that, I would say to them, well, by what authority can you put limits on God's creativity?
No, exactly. Right. Just because he created, and I think the Bible more supports it than anything else.
Yeah,
so,
I think so.
Yeah. So what was it that actually interested you in ufology? That you devoted so much of your life to it. Have you had an experience of your own? What really got you rocking and rolling on this?
That is a very good question. I had been interested. Actually, maybe you could say I came to the conclusion that there was other life out there just by looking up in the sky. And all the while I was even teaching at Penn State, I was studying the issue. And my background is engineering, and engineers have to kind of figure out how things work. So I was always working on that, getting as much information as I could. And I think I know how they work, not exactly, but pretty much. But anyway, so when I retired, I thought, I should write a book to kind of give whatever knowledge I have into a book form for people to read so they understand it. But then I decided, of all the conferences that I'd gone to, everybody in the audience who were believers, of course, would be there, and they would say, well, when are we going to have disclosure? When are we going to have disclosure? And so I'm thinking to myself, disclosure is never going to happen until the people, the voters, want disclosure. And so you have to do a grassroots effort. Writing books for the people who already believe is not as good as if you could get the information into the hands and minds of people who maybe don't give much thought about UFOs, but they'd pick up a science fiction book and they'd read that. And that's my approach. I bury the information that I was going to give out, I bury it in the dialogue of the characters. So people get an interesting story, and meanwhile, they're learning information that they would have earned if I had written my original idea. But it's a strange thing as to why I would devote my life. I've never ever felt that I had been compelled to do anything except this. And I don't know why I feel compelled to do this, because I could be playing golf and other things like that. But I really do feel, I really feel that it's my mission now for the rest of my life, perhaps, to try and I would say enlighten people about this subject matter, because I am really afraid that when disclosure does occur, whether it's because we decide it, our governments decide it, or whether the aliens, and they're probably the ones that really be the ones to decide it, but whoever decides it, there are probably people who are deeply religious and might do some drastic things. Yeah. And I hate to see that happen. So I think what I'm trying to do is ease people into the reality of UFOs and ETs.
Yeah, and I think that's it seems like the government themselves are trying to do it though, kind of like that too. It's been a drip, drip, drip for a long time, and
yeah.
And I was just talking about that with somebody today about the religious implications of disclosure, and how, there are definitely going to be some people who are not going to be able to handle it. They're going to go absolutely bonkers. Now, that's not everybody, but it doesn't take many, right?
Yeah. And so I guess my goal is to try and reduce the number of people that would go bonkers.
Yeah, but yeah. I hope I can.
That is, in fact, someone, a relative of mine, sent me an email because of all this news about, what was going to be released by the government and everything. And the question posed to me was, do you think that the disclosure is going to destroy religion? Mm-hmm. And I'm working on the answer, by the way. It wasn't a simple answer, and I have been working on it, and I'm not ready to give it yet, but that's a valid question. Because I have met people along the way who, as you said, might go bonkers. And my feeling is that religious leaders need to really start thinking about how they're going to respond and how they're going to explain the stories in the Bible in little different terms, perhaps, than what they've been used to doing.
Yeah, they do drills on so many different scenarios, power grids going down, and all kinds of stuff. I wonder if they do drills like that because, if you had an open mind, like say you and I do, and you have any kind of spirituality whatsoever, I would think that this would enhance it, because now you have a chance to pick the minds of others from other worlds and see, what do they know about God, if anything. Now you got to prepare yourself for them to look at you and say, oh, Lord, sit down, we need to have a talk. That could happen. Or
yeah.
they could tell you, well, give you all the answers you've been looking for. You never know. And so, but some people aren't going to want to hear it. They're going to say, no, they're demons and demons lie. And yeah, it's going to be bad.
Well, as I was formulating my potential response to the question, in the old days, if you ask a person where's heaven, they would point up to the sky, and if you ask them where hell was, they'd point down below the earth. And so none of these angels and demons reside on earth. They're extraterrestrials, right? They're ETs.
Right. That's what yeah, exactly. And and so I have a feeling, how are people going to react if they look at us and say, you ask them the question and they tell you, well, we put you guys here or something. Because I mean, you gotta be open to all the possibilities. Now, I know it ticks some people off, but I mean, it's possible. You never know.
Well,
So
you know, I have several books out that have evolved from my lectures, and one of them is this, and my nonfiction books are called The Science Behind.
yes,
And so the first one out was Science Behind Alien Encounters. But Zecharia Sitchin's book, The 12th Planet, really affected me a lot and got me to thinking about a lot of things, especially about the flood, for instance, because he had said that he felt that Noah's flood occurred in Mesopotamia, and it was a result of glaciers cascading into the ocean, and that it occurred about 13,000 years ago. And he picked that time because he was thinking that's about when Nibiru would be making a close approach, and it would gravitationally cause an instability, and the huge glaciers that were sitting on Antarctica would start falling in. So I began actually looking into that and learned a lot about the Sumerian culture. And I do believe, in fact, I started lecturing on it, and again, it became a book. And so my take on Noah's flood is that, yes, indeed, he was a Sumerian. He didn't know how to read, for sure, but he was a Sumerian. He lived in just south of Baghdad. And the actual event occurred 14,700 years ago. And I can back that up a number of ways. Number one, I think it was a mega tsunami that caused the flood. 14,500 years ago, we were just coming out of the ice age, and the ice along the eastern edge of Antarctica, which faces into the Straits of Hormuz, is 8 miles thick. Huge. And so as it cascaded, you've seen calving of glaciers, you know how huge chunks of ice fall. Imagine something 8 miles high falling into the water. The energy it would release would be tremendous. And also, at that time, sea level was 370 feet below where it is now. And so that meant that the Persian Gulf was actually a lake. And I looked at some maps and I said, geez, it's fed by 4 rivers, just like the Bible says. In fact, by the time I finished doing my research and my lecture and my writing the book, I was amazed at how well everything fit with the Old Testament. And so in my scenario that I describe in the science behind Noah's flood is Noah's then carried by this flood up to almost the border with Turkey, and then up the Euphrates Valley, basically. And first thing anybody would do after that would get out of the boat and go to high ground. And I think he did. He headed up into Turkey, actually.
Yeah.
And there's evidence of remains that are underwater now because they built a dam across the Euphrates in that area. But archaeologists got in there and got some pictures of things before it was all underwater. And it's interesting, if you look at the remains, they're very similar to the structures that were built at Göbekli Tepe, and that's dated to be some of the ruins. They still haven't been recovered yet; they're still underground. But the archaeologists, using the ground penetrating radar, felt that they were at least 14,000 years old. So in my story, then Noah and his family made it up to Turkey, and they settled in that I can't remember the name of the small village, but they set up this religious structure. And then as their family grew bigger, they made the even bigger structures over at Göbekli Tepe. And Göbekli Tepe, if you've looked at the map or if you're familiar with it, overlooks, it's about 1,000 feet above the plain, but it overlooks the plain of Haran. Now, it's interesting that Haran is the name of Abraham's younger brother. And when I first started lecturing about this, everyone believed that Abraham lived in Ur. And he, then later on migrated over to Canaan. But that bothered me because on maps it didn't look right. And I was looking at something on the television, on the internet, and there was this travelogue out of Sandalupa, which is in Turkey. And the guide would say, okay, folks, follow me and I will take you to the cave where Abraham was born. So that got me to thinking, because Sandalupa was only 25 miles away from where I think Noah actually settled in. And I think that Abraham actually was born in Sandalupa. And at one point in time, his father said, "Okay, family, we're going to go to Canaan." And so they headed out, and they got halfway into the plain of Haran when Abraham's younger brother died. And so the whole family stayed there, including Abraham, until Abraham was like 75 years old. And by the way, at that time, it was polytheistic. The religion was polytheistic. But he had a calling to go to Canaan and set up this monotheistic belief. And he, of course, he brought Lot with him. But that all fits together and ties in with all the information that I got.
Now, how would they, well, as the story goes, he was told, oh, build an ark, because, there's this flood's coming. But,
Yes.
So then is it to say that they were warned that the tsunami was actually coming?
Yes.
Ah.
Yes. By an intelligence that was advanced enough that they could travel from one planet to another, and obviously would have had the capability to monitor what was going on around the world and to know what was about to happen.
I see.
And the signal that was given to Noah was when you hear the rumble. And the rumble was, the earth actually started shaking when these huge chunks of ice were falling into the ocean and releasing all this energy. And it actually caused things to happen around the world, including the mountain area where there's a lot of instability in the Zagros Mountains. And so they would have been making a lot of noise, and that was the signal for Noah to get into his boat. Well, next question in my mind was, did they know how to build a boat 14,000 years ago? And believe it or not, they did. In fact, there was a researcher out of, I think, I don't know if it was Cambridge or maybe it was I don't remember exactly which one, but he was an English person who had researched the question of boat building. And he said about 18,000 years ago, there were people who built boats out of, bones and wood and things with skins, and they actually managed to make it over to Greenland. So there was capability to build boats. But the ark, that in my story, in my last slide is this is what the ark looks like, and people look at it, and it looks like a giant inner tube. I don't know. When I was a kid, we used to get an inner tube that had patches on it and blow it up and float around in it. Well, that's kind of what it was around. It was a round structure, a huge round structure, and so that's what he built.
I always wondered if the ark wouldn't have been maybe, and here I am just speculating, but maybe it'd been some type of spaceship or something, because the thought of all these animals, it had to have been something that held the DNA of life and not actually all these different animals. I can't imagine penguins made their way over, but it's
Right.
that kind of thing. So I always wondered if it wasn't some kind of, like we do now. I know Russia's got a DNA bank where they're getting DNA, rounding it up from everything life force on the planet, and they're storing it for whatever reason. They're even talking about putting these on the moon now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you think of this, the flood story, which is a major event in the Sumerian culture. I mean, it was a dividing line for them. And it was not a world flood, by the way, although there are a lot of flood stories. This was not a world flood. I mean, although the sea level did rise back up about 370 feet after about 15,000 years, and anybody who happened to be camped out down on the at lower levels at that time, they got wiped out. But it was not the flood that people imagine. Now, first of all, they didn't have writing until about 6,000 years ago. So all of these stories of the flood and the myths were carried down, by mouth. And probably these structures that were built in Göbekli Tepe, which were like religious structures, is probably where they would have religious meetings, and someone, the fathers of the tribe would repeat these stories, to keep the memories alive. And so it was carried down through history by oral tradition until finally, about 6,000 years ago, the Sumerians, who invented just about everything, invented writing. So at that point, but to anybody who had been involved in that flood, it would have looked like the whole world was covered, because you wouldn't have seen anything. I mean,
the
whole valley would have been completely flooded.
If you talk to people who've been involved in just tornadoes and things in their community, they come out of their hiding and they look up, and it's like, to them the world has been, rocked.
Yeah.
So I can imagine what it was like. And then way back then, you think too, somebody comes down and say a spaceship, a UFO or something like that. Why wouldn't you think it was a god of some sort? So, yeah.
You're right. That's one of the theories as to why the aliens wouldn't land on the White House lawn. I happen to believe they are not only extremely well advanced technologically, but I think spiritually as well. And I think they have been around here for a long time. And in fact, in Sitchin's book, he kind of came to the conclusion that the Sumerians believed that I don't know if the Sumerians realized it, but Sitchin kind of reports that it was the Anunnaki who genetically moderated a species that was living in Africa at that time. Homo erectus is what I point to. To create a being that was more intelligent in order to act as like slaves and to help mine their gold. And the big question in my mind has always been, why would the Anunnaki be so interested in getting our gold? And I'm still pondering, it would seem to have been of interest to them. But there's a lot of corroboration with what Sitchin says. In fact, I spent a whole chapter in The Science Behind No Flood showing how everything that Sitchin had said, and he wrote his book in 1967 when people didn't know much about genetics and a lot of other things. And the idea of rogue planets, nobody even thought about that. But yet Nibiru was a rogue planet, and there it is. I mean, Sitchin states that.
Yeah.
He gleans that just from studying the history and of that region.
What puzzles me more than them wanting the gold, what puzzles me more is that they were so intelligent, and yet they created something so fragile to do their work for them. You would think, like we build steel machines and stuff to do this stuff, and here they build these flesh and bones easily. Maybe that's why they did it, so they could shut us down if they needed to. I don't know. But yeah.
Well, I guess that's a good question. Why didn't they build machines to do it?
Yeah.
But maybe it was easier for them to, and since maybe they had the ability to do that, to just modify the creatures that were already there, that were similar to them, and get them evolved to where they could communicate and have them do all the work. But the question still is in my mind, why did they need the gold? And I apparently Nibiru was in trouble. They needed the gold to save their planet for some reason.
Atmospheric, I heard.
What's that?
Atmospheric, I heard. They needed it for their atmosphere or something like that, yeah.
Well, what I visualize, here's a scenario that I came up with. First of all, imagine a planet that spends about 3,500 years beyond the orbit of Pluto. You're in darkness. The sun would look like a bright star to you. So you're not going to get much energy from it.
Yeah.
And so because you need energy for life. And so then I'm thinking, maybe Nibiru, it wasn't where they came from. It might have been one of the moons, because we now know that we have a couple of moons that we have our eyes on. One is the moon of Jupiter, and another moon from Saturn.
Yeah.
That are ice covered, and due to the gravitational surge and friction generates heat. So underneath the ice is water, and I know Nibiru supposedly had something like 11 moons at one time. But so I think it'd make more sense if the Anunnaki came from a moon of Nibiru, and the problem they had was for 3,500 years they were out there freezing, and then for maybe 50 years they came close to the sun, and it was kind of uncomfortable, like they're having, just like we're having, our heat waves.
Yeah.
And so maybe what they did is pulverize the gold and put it into orbit, kind of to form a gold reflecting shield to both maintain the heat on the surface of the planet and also help reflect the sun's energy when they got too close to it. that's the only, thing I could think of why they'd need gold.
Yeah, and I've had guests on who, would come on and talk about the stories of the Anunnaki and such, and I always, always raises a lot of questions, and the gold was one, the whole, just so many questions about it, and
Yeah,
I don't know, it just seems kind of that they would be doing things just a little differently, maybe.
yeah,
Like I would have built steel machines, not people. However, maybe we were part of that long term plan of theirs, of whatever the hell it is. I don't know. I guess
yeah,
we're still trying to figure that out. But yeah, I've heard a lot of different things when it comes to the Anunnaki and Nibiru. The brown dwarf star, I heard, is and that these things are
yeah,
that's what it really is, and they're on like one of the planets or moons next. I don't know. I get a lot of different stories. I think Sitchin, his is probably one of the more interesting
yeah.
ones. Yeah. So
I'm a believer of what he said, because like I said, I spent a whole chapter showing how the 40 years since he wrote that book, everything that he said which he believed was what happened, can be justified, and even to the extent of how the Earth came to where it is, that there was a collision at the time that Earth was just half of the body that was orbiting in the asteroid belt at that time, and Nibiru and a couple of its moons actually smashed it up and formed the asteroid belt and sent a large chunk down to where we are now, because that accounts for how it is that we have so much water on this planet. They've never come up with any other theory about why the Earth has so much water, because we should not have it, given our location relative to the sun.
and it's not just the Earth. When you think about it, on Mars too, there was plenty of water there. And now they're finding that there still is below ground,
Yeah.
especially. And
But
they even think Venus at one time was flourishing at one time.
yeah,
So
they've done an analysis of the water ice that's captured in asteroids, which come from the asteroid belt, and they look at the ratio of deuterium to hydrogen, and they've looked at the ratio of deuterium to hydrogen from samples they've taken from the moon, and then compared it to Earth, and they've looked at also asteroids, samples they've taken from asteroids, which come in from outside the Kuiper belt, way out there.
yeah.
And the only sample beside the moon, the only other sample that matches the Earth's ratio, are the asteroids, samples from asteroids that come down on Earth, as a meteor.
Yeah.
So that's strong evidence that the Earth formed out at that location. And the further out you go from the sun, the more ice and water ice you get. And like Ceres, which is in the asteroid belt, it's like 25% water ice. And then you go out even further and you look at the moons of Jupiter and the moons of Saturn, you get a lot of water ice. So it all makes sense. Like I said, almost everything that Sitchin said makes sense. And so I kind of believe it. And what I've always wondered is what the Anunnaki look like. I've not heard a good description of the Anunnaki.
We probably would know if we weren't having so much stuff hidden from us. I bet there's pictures, descriptions of them in caves and all kinds of stuff. And I mean, I'm sure they look like something like that, probably.
Well,
yeah.
Here's the thing that really got my attention. I might have mentioned to you that I went down to Peru about a year and a half ago to look at some mysterious bodies that were down there. You may have heard of them. Some people refer to them as mummies, but they're not.
Yeah.
But the thing that got me was Jaime Maussan, who I'm sure, in November of 2017, gave a lecture at Paula Harris's thing that she had over in Laughlin, Nevada. And I attended that. And as soon as Jaime showed the bodies, and both species are tridactyl, so they have 12 digits. They have 3 fingers on each hand and 3 toes on each foot, 12 digits. And I've always wondered, why was the number 12 of such importance to the Sumerians? I mean, that's why we ended up with 12 months in the year, why we have two periods, two 12-hour periods in a day. Their base number system is 60. Ours is 10. Now we have 10 digits. Maybe that's how we got 10. So base 60 is actually 12 times, 12 times 5, 5 12s. And they've even divided the circle. Instead of like we divided into 360 degrees,
Yeah.
they divided it into 30 15-degree increment. I'm sorry, 12-degree increments. 30 12-degree increments. And the triangle, which has 180 degrees included, is also a multiple of 12. So 12 was important to them, and I often wondered, is that because their deities or their gods had 12 fingers? Because certainly the Sumerians didn't have 12 fingers. So when I saw that, that really got me hooked, and that's when I started following Jaime around. In fact, I went down to Peru with him when the bodies finally got settled in Peru at a university down there. And I went down to see them, and Jaime was giving a talk down there at the time. So in my science fiction series, the Alien Log 4, the fourth novel of the series, subtitled is The Antarctic Affair, and I'm actually going to introduce photographs of those bodies, including computer tomography images of those two species that were found down in Peru. And they're extremely interesting. I don't know if you know about them, but like I said, there's two species. There's one species that they refer to as reptilian. It's only about 2 feet tall and has eggs.
No, tell me about it.
You have heard about it, yeah.
No. Actually, I didn't hear about the whole reptilian. Now, real quick, and I'd like you to explain that to me. But I had just read where in China they had found in caves these new skulls, and I guess skeletons actually, that they don't match anything else. It's like another new type species, and they're calling it lizard man or something like that.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah, I was just reading about that last night. So interesting stuff. So tell me about these reptilians.
Well, there's two species. Like I said, the one species is only about 2 foot tall. They're all bipedal and all tridactyl, both species. The smaller ones are, like I said, they think they're more reptilian because of their skin. When I looked at the pictures, it reminded me of when I used to prepare turkeys for Thanksgiving. You know how the skin looks.
Yeah.
Well, that's what their skin looked like. They have eggs. The DNA of them, they have not been able to match it to any living organism on the Earth. And I'll tell you more about them in a minute. But the other species is a little more human looking. She is a female. She's normal height, about 5 feet tall, tridactyl, but other than that, pretty much looks quite human, and has all the features of a human, except that her cranial space was about 20% larger than the human would be at that size. So it's like the enlarged skulls that they found down there. It didn't look quite that enlarged, but it was enlarged more than our skulls. And 25% of her DNA matches humans. That's it. So, and they dated them. The smaller ones, the small species, we'll call them reptilians. They figured they died about 1,100 years ago, and Maria is the other one. They call her Maria, about 1,750 years ago. Now, the interesting thing about both species is they all still had all their internal organs.
Oh,
so
my God.
They were covered with the diatomaceous earth and maybe some other oil or something to preserve them. Plus, where they found them was in an area of Peru where they might get a quarter inch of rain about every 3 years. It's very, very dry. So they were well preserved. But the interesting thing about Maria, when you looked at the computer tomography slices, you can see her heart, her lungs, and everything. And then when it gets down to her intestines, there's evidence of feces there. And when I went down there, I said, you really should try and extract that feces and do a carbon dating on that, because carbon dating makes the assumption that whatever you're dating lived its entire life on Earth, and Maria may not have, since she's pure. She could have, but she may not have. But whatever she ate the day that she died, probably was something that spent its life on Earth, and that would give a more accurate date to Maria. And as far as the other species, they are really interesting. They resemble more of a frog from their internal organs and everything. They don't seem to have a heart. They don't have lungs. They don't have teeth. They have a very small mouth and look like very little ability to eat. And everyone is thinking that maybe they had a liquid diet.
Yeah.
But my feeling is, based on the research I've done over the years and reading about reports from the people who have been abducted, my theory is that they absorb their nutrients through their skin. And that led me to do some research further that I hadn't even thought about. Here, I'm getting very old here, but I never realized that a frog could breathe underwater. Did you know that?
No, I thought they held their breath till they came up.
No, they have lungs, but when they're underwater, they can absorb oxygen and give off CO2. When they're on land, they don't have a diaphragm, but they have lungs. And if you ever watch a frog, the bottom under his jaw is going up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
Well, what he's doing is he opens his nostrils and he brings it down. He sucks in air into his mouth. He closes the nostrils. He then pulls it back up and forces that air into his lungs. So that's his form of a diaphragm. So they can operate on land or in water, and it's transdermal. It's transdermal process that they use when they're underwater. And I've heard of transdermal patches for medication, so I know we can take things in through our skin. And since there doesn't seem to be any evidence for any other way that these little guys can, bring in nutrients, in my book, my science fiction book, I describe them as periodically they go and they immerse themselves in a fluid and they absorb the nutrients through that fluid.
I see.
Yeah.
No, that's awful interesting. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I remember, I've gone through so many books. I couldn't even put my hand on the one where I got the detail, but maybe one of John Mack's cases or something where people who had encountered the aliens knew that, were told maybe that the little grays actually absorb the nutrients through their skin. So in my story, the little gray guys, or the reptilians, are actually the worker bees, and they're grown. Or let's put it like the chicken. You might have a chicken farm, right?
Yeah.
And so when you need more chickens, you fertilize the chicken eggs. They're already in the chicken. So when it hatches, they have another chicken. And I think I do the same kind of process, I think, is in my story anyway, is what is happening in this UFO that's trapped under 1,000 feet of ice. And it's been there and these little guys have been there for thousands of years. And of course, the immediate reaction is, well, nothing can live 1,000 years. Well, that's not true. We have trees that live 5,000 years. And who's to say how long an alien could live? But anyway, So there's these little guys maintaining the ship because the makers, as they refer them, are the Marias that I described. And they went off to explore, and they haven't returned.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'll tell you what. We got a break coming up here. So, matter of fact, we're a minute or two over it. So, hang on with me for just a couple minutes, or a few minutes, actually. And we'll take this break and we'll come back. Folks, I noticed on the video end, it was lagging a little bit, so I've taken myself off camera, but still rolling anyways. Let's take this break. This is Late Night in the Midlands. I'm Michael Vara. I have an excellent guest tonight in Dr. Robert E Farrell. 9 years since he's been on. Wow. We'll be right back, folks. Don't go with my guest. So, Doctor, I guess, all the UFO encounters that have happened, I mean, there's been a lot of biggies, right? And I mean, everything from Phoenix Lights to the Roswell stuff, I mean, we can go on, right? I just feel like there's so much evidence already. I mean, why are we waiting for some guy with a suit and tie to walk down a carpet and tell us that we're not alone anyways?
Well, it could be. Well, first of all, I get that question all the time at the end of my lectures. Why doesn't the government tell us what they know? And there's some good theories about that. One of them is the governments realize that if a superior race or superior intelligence with superior technology and maybe even more superior intellectually and spiritually were to suddenly appear on our planet, people would turn away from the government and turn toward that entity, and almost as a god, I guess you might say. And governments might tend to lose control, and I think they don't like to do that. That's one theory, anyway, as to why the government doesn't want to reveal what they know. Of course, back in the 1947 period of time, Roswell and other times, it was right after the war, and the argument there was that they thought people had war nerves and they wouldn't be able to handle it. They'd panic, and so that's why they kept it hidden then. And then, as I said, the Robertson Committee concluded that they should keep it under wraps because it might clog the phone lines if people start believing in UFOs. So make it seem like they don't exist. And but the other question is, well, why don't the aliens decide to?
Exactly. That's my biggest question. Is like, why would they honor us? I mean, why wouldn't they say, hey, if you don't tell the people, we're going to?
Well, there's few answers to that one too, and I'll tell you the best one at the end.
Okay.
One is if you had been around for about a few thousand years, and I think they have, maybe 100,000 years or so, and seen everything that we do to each other. Like annihilate 60 million people in World War II, and all the wars we have. Would you really want to come down and shake our hand? Probably not. In fact, if you remember, I don't know if you've ever seen the classic movie The Day the Earth Stood Still.
I do remember that.
Michael Mann,
Yeah.
1951. That was really a good book. I mean, a good movie, and kind of philosophically tried to address what would happen. And what happened, of course, is first thing is we get our cannons, our tanks lined up to shoot this thing after it lands, and well, they don't. It ends up peacefully, but at first it didn't look like it was going to. But anyway, the other thing is that Michael Rennie, who is the alien, wants to see the president, but meanwhile, while he's waiting to see him, he's given a tour. And he walks into this room where this scientist is writing on the blackboard. Maybe it was Einstein, I don't know, trying to work out these equations. And so Michael Rennie walks over and erases a few things and puts some other things in to correct it. In other words, that man who just spent 20 years of his life trying to work out those equations has somebody walk up and just say, well, here, it's so simple, look. And so that leads to probably the best explanation, and that is assuming that they are well advanced spiritually and wise and in all other ways, they would understand. And I get this theory, by the way, from Dr. Jacobs. You may know him. He also is a ufologist. But
yes,
he's
sir.
History professor at Temple University. And in fact, I posed that question to him. I was at a luncheon table, and I asked him that. And he said, well, history has shown that when a more advanced civilization interacts with a less advanced civilization, eventually the less advanced civilization disappears. And of course, that would be us.
Well, yeah, look at all the ones before us. They're finding all these fossils, right? These mummies and things. Well, what happened to them? I don't know. They're not here no more.
So I think they're waiting for us to reach the proper point in our evolution where indeed it would make sense to make contact. One question that arises is SETI's been looking out into space to try and make contact or at least get evidence of life out there. And I used to be a member of SETI, and I wrote him a letter once. I said, have you ever looked at the designs on the ground? Like crop circles? Yeah. And their answer was no, basically. And because it turns out these crop designs are not created by humans.
No,
Uh,
they're not.
and
Yeah.
and they seem to have messages in them. And because I put that into my lecture, and I say what they're probably doing is it's a intelligence test for us to find out if we're ready yet.
Yeah, and then you get idiots who will go out there with boards and say, "Oh, we're the ones doing it," and people believe it, and that's all propaganda because you could tell which ones are done by people and which ones are not.
Oh yeah,
These stems
very
are
much so.
bent over, not broken, and there's just no way. If you were to put a board on that and do that, the stems would break. So, but anyways, that aside, I mean, look at some of the patterns that have come out in crop circles. You've had the bees. They remember. I don't know if you remember some of these, but I've had a couple guests who've come on about these crop circles, and they, one was a bee. It looked like they were giving us a message, maybe that our bees were dying off.
Actually, were.
Yeah, there was another one with birds. There was a bird in it, and we had the bird die-offs at the time. I mean, it's just not coincidence. Then there's one with it looks like a solar system of some sort and planets, and I'm like, oh boy, what are they trying to tell us here?
Well, there was a major design, I think 2002. It appeared right across the road from the monolithic structure in London. The name escapes me.
Oh, yeah, I'm lost on it.
The stones that are Stonehenge.
Oh yeah, okay, Stonehenge. Yeah.
And the road that goes by there is apparently one of the most busy roads in England. And in 45 minutes' time, a huge design that consisted of like 960 different circles to form a mathematical pattern. It appeared in broad daylight, and no one saw it. It certainly wasn't made by people with boards, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm with you on that. One of the great guests I've had on this whole crop circle thing was Patty Greer, and some of these people, they discuss how they could feel energy and things, and there's readings when they get in these crop circles. There's even a video out there that shows like these orbs coming down just out of nowhere and creating this. I mean, and it's a real video. So that tells me maybe they have their own drones. They send their drones down to do these things.
Well, actually, you asked me if I had ever seen a UFO.
Yeah.
And actually, I had one when I was in Cancun, a Foo Fighter, which is with the orb. During the World War II, they called them Foo Fighters, but they're orbs. And it flew right over my head. I was sitting on the balcony looking out over the Caribbean at the time, and there was some clouds coming in off the Caribbean, and all of a sudden this ball of light shoots over my head and then zooms up in behind the clouds. And my first reaction was, a meteor. But then wait a second, meteors don't zoom up behind clouds. And within about a millisecond, I said, oh, that's a Foo Fighter. And we have been seeing those even since World War II, and I think they're drones. I want to say unmanned or maybe unaliened drones. They're just mechanical drones that are monitoring us, and that's their technology for monitoring us. And I had an interesting story in my lecture. I was giving my lecture in Connecticut at a group called the Army Air Force Roundtable of Connecticut.
Oh.
And this was about 10 years ago, I guess. I was giving this lecture. It was my Science Behind Alien Encounters lecture. And I show pictures of these Foo Fighters behind. One of them shows the B-17 with two of these Foo Fighters following it. And then there's one of a Japanese dive bomber with a Foo Fighter. Anyway, during the question and answer period, now keep in mind, this is the Army Air Force Roundtable. And the key words are Army Air Force. Because if you know your history, the Army Air Force became the U.S. Air Force in 1947, which means anybody that flew planes in World War II were in the Army Air Force. Ah. So there were a good portion of the people in the audience in this club who actually flew planes during World War II. So during the Q&A, one of them stood up and he says, I flew B-17s in Europe during the war, And my buddy also flew B-17, and my buddy told me that he had one of those things follow his plane, and one of them came right up to his plane and went right through the wing of his plane, and it didn't hurt the plane or the Foo Fighter.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I have a bucket list of questions that I'm still trying to resolve, and one of them is, how is it that the aliens have a technology that allows them to pass one solid object to another? Because people who are abducted a lot of times will report that they were taken right out through a closed window or through the ceiling or through
Yeah.
other structure and into a UFO. And they have the ability to do that, and I'm not sure how they do it, but that's in my bucket list of
And-
things to fight.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I've heard so many cases like that where people have actually seen grays walking through the wall.
Yes.
And that tells me they could go on to a realm, what I would call the spiritual realm. It's like they're able to go, to that kind of vibration. Because
Yeah.
I mean that's what ghosts can do, and and ghosts are very real too. Despite what anybody might think, and one day you have the experience, you'll see yourself. But I mean, there is this spiritual realm, and it's like they're able to do exactly what ghosts can do, or spirits or what have you. I think that's amazing, and that tells me that when we do leave these meat suits, we don't go very far, maybe.
Yeah. That is another, excuse me, an unanswered question that I've been wrestling with is, where is the spirit?
Yeah.
And so far, I'm assigning that to a fifth dimension. 'Cause I don't think it's in the 4 dimensions. Well, it might include time, but at least not in the 3 dimensions that we're in. So there's many dimensions, and in fact, I have come to the conclusion that UFOs propel themselves with gravitational field propulsion, and more specifically, a negative field, not anti-gravity, but a negative gravity. And there's some science that supports that, and a lot of research and experiments that have been done that support the concept of a negative gravitational field. But in order to explain that from a theoretical field, they have to invoke like 8 dimensions. And one theory says that gravitational field actually consists of 3 different components, and one of those components is negative. And so there is indeed a chance to produce a negative field. In fact, you probably heard people talk about Eugene Plekhanov and his experiments, where he creates a burst of a negative gravity. And in fact, he even claims that he measured the speed of that pulse, which was negative, at 64 times the speed of light. And in my second novel, my character is talking to an alien about, well, where are you from? And he was saying, well, the star that's about 4 light years away. Well, that means then you act autonomously, because you have to make all your own decisions. They're too far away for you to ask them to help you with decisions. And the alien says, well, not that far. He says, we send our messages on a carrier wave that's basically a gravitational pulse, which travels at 64 times the speed of light. So we can get an answer pretty quickly, basically. And the other thing that I found very interesting more recently is the Schwarzschild solution to Einstein's field equations. If you look at the equations, and if you plug in a negative G, I'm proponing the idea that it's a negative gravitational field. If you plug that in, then the speed of light locally in that field can be very fast, many times faster than what we call the speed of light.
Yeah.
And that opens the door for hyperdrive. So Star Trek may be right.
Well,
maybe there is a hyperdrive.
I'll tell you, I'm no Einstein, okay, but I feel like that if it could be thought about, it's possible. That's just how I feel on this. It's like for me, it's almost like we're in this simulation, and these extraterrestrials and these spirits, they're like mods. They're able to do these special mods where they can hack into this, come back into this world. It's just amazing how it all rolls. I don't know. It just seems like I don't know. We're gonna walk out of this tent one of these days and just laugh and go, "I knew it. I knew it."
Yeah.
But
Well, that's what makes life interesting, and I want to hang around as long as I can just to watch what develops.
me too. And I hear, oh, well, somebody will pass away and everyone will say, oh, well, they know the truth now. And I've even said that, but do they really? I mean, and if they do, if they come back, I mean, it's almost like if it is a simulation of some sort, and we're really the spirit, as they say, and we come into these so-called meat suits for this experience because, there's a lot of speculation on this going all different ways. I kind of look at it like maybe if, like, once we experience, say, eating a piece of pizza in this physical world, now when we go back to the spirit world, we know what that's like, so we can kind of manifest it without actually having to make the pizza, I guess. And so that's kind of like we're here for this experience, and it's like the bowling shoes is how I describe it. You go bowling, you rent the shoes. When you leave the bowling alley, you got to hand the shoes back in.
Yeah. Well, there's the nice thing about writing science fiction is you can create some pretty interesting scenarios.
Yeah.
And one of them in my book, this alien is talking to, the humans talking to an alien, and the talk is about reincarnation. And
right, you go on the ride again.
yeah. So, well, the alien says, each life is there for your spiritual growth, so to grow toward perfection. And then the human says, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by perfection? And the alien says, well, I'm surprised you don't know that because Jesus tried to tell you that. And that is, when you can get to the point of unconditional love, you're pretty much there.
Ooh, and a lot of us are a long ways from that.
My dog isn't.
Oh, yeah, right. Exactly. See, that's a great point you make, too. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's people who treat their animals horribly, but that animal will come in the house and love the hell out of them yet,
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. So there's an example. So we look at these animals sometimes as they're lesser than us, and they're actually probably higher forms of life than us.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they've got it figured out, so they didn't need to talk and be able to have thumbs and create stuff. They've already been there, done that. Like, they probably look at us and laugh. Who knows?
I think that's what I am watching when my dog opens his mouth with his tongue hanging out. He's actually laughing at me.
Yeah, that's probably what he's doing. He's absolutely probably doing that. I just read an article at the beginning of the show, and they're saying that now they're looking at planets that we would be visible to, like other star systems that would actually see us. And they said that out of it all, there's about 1,700 some odd planets out there, out in the other solar systems or what have you, that if they had the right telescopes, they'd be able to spot us. And so, now they're starting to talk about how, these extraterrestrials out there, if they were even as advanced as we are, that they'd be capable of finding us, and maybe some just a little more advanced coming to check us out. And so, and I always said that I think it would be really easy because, say we found a planet out there and it had all these satellites circling it, right? All we'd have to do is come up with something that could read the data on them satellites, and we'd learn a lot about them. So maybe that's what they do. And, they come and they say, hey, let's go check out the circus. You're not going to believe how savage these people are.
Yeah. Well, first of all, my feeling is if you can justify the claim that there's one alien life form visiting the Earth, then I can say there's probably thousands of different forms visiting the Earth. I mean, how could you limit it to just one?
And I bet some are interdimensional, things that we couldn't even begin to understand.
You're right. So when I was writing Alien Log, the first book, I was halfway through and I was thinking, well, now, so I was actually wrestling with whether the aliens were benevolent or not, because I didn't want to be a Pied Piper and lead the people off the cliff,
Yeah.
So that was a big question. And also, I was wondering if there's so much life out there, somehow it has to be organized. And maybe that's called the Galactic Federation. And maybe the Galactic Federation has some rules. Like when you come across a planet that has developing intelligence, you aren't supposed to interfere with it. So the question is, well, who cares? Why? Well, the reason is you have to maintain diversity. If you went to every planet that had life and tried to make it like you would be destroying diversity, and that's not good.
Like we do here on Earth. Everybody, you get these power mongers and they want everyone to be, the same, Basically, put you in the same uniform, same haircut, same everything. And you know what? As human beings, if we all looked identical, we would find something to go after each other for, I'm sure. It's almost like it's been embedded in our DNA. We need an upgrade, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, that was another question that occurred in my second novel. The main character gets abducted accidentally, and Quellen, who's the alien who's in charge, they're aboard the mothership, and he's kind of embarrassed that they accidentally abducted this guy. He's an astrophysicist, the one that was abducted. So Quellen says, well, I'm really sorry we did that, and we'll take you back in a little while, but can I give you a tour of the mothership and answer questions? Because Quellen knows that whatever he answers, that he can erase the conscious memory from this guy when he lets him go. So anyway, one of the questions was, why are you creating hybrids?
Yeah.
Quellen says, well, we are creating hybrids to usher in the New World Order. As a matter of fact, that's the subtitle of Alien Log 2, the New World Order. And so the Corey is the name of the astrophysicist. He says, well, what's that? And, I almost regret putting that in the book, because when I say the New World Order, people have bad images in their mind about what that would be. In this case, I think you would agree it's not so bad, because as Quellen would explain it, think of it in terms of our government. Except this is a world government that he's talking about. But if we did it to our government, in our government, if we followed those rules, every elected official would serve 1 4-year term. All elections would be publicly financed. And the way the House of Representatives is chosen is everyone in your district from the age of 18 to 100 years old or whatever is in a draft pool, just like the military draft. And 6 months before the term is up on whoever's the congressperson for your district, the computer picks out half a dozen names and sends them out. And so you get something in the mail that says, congratulations, you have been selected to run for Congress. You have 30 days to appeal, because some people may have to appeal for various reasons. So then after the appeal process is over, then the remaining people then go and have to take a course in civics, a college course, and their grade is recorded and it's part of the selection process for the people that are trying to vote for you. And as I said, the election process is tightly controlled, publicly financed, and there are debates that occur, and then finally someone is selected to be the winner, and that person then goes to Washington for 2 weeks for orientation, to meet his peers, his other freshman Congress people, and maybe some of the older people there. And then he comes home, and he has a staff and an office and everything in his district, and he stays there pretty much. And once a month he has to do a town hall, and on television, and solicit input and also explain what they're working on. And then at the end of the term, he may say, I think I want to go on and serve in the government some more. So I think I want to be a senator, because in order to be a senator, you have to have been in the House of Representatives. Yeah. So he throws his hat in the ring, and the computer picks out of all those hats, picks 6 people, let's say, who can run as a senator. And the process is the same, publicly financed. The only difference is they don't have to go to the civics class. So then when the election's over and the senator is chosen, the senator goes to Washington for 2 weeks for orientation and everything, and they come back to their state where they have an office and a staff. And my feeling is, with the technology we have now, like with Zoom and Skype, is why does everybody have to go down to that one spot called Washington where somebody could put a dirty bomb and really ruin everything.
Yeah.
Why not? And plus, I think they should be closer to their constituents. The other thing in this new world order is lobbyists can lobby, but it has to be on a public forum. And if there's any financial benefit that's given to any public official, representative or senator, that's illegal. They go to jail for that. So anyway, when you're done being a senator, you say, I think I could be president. I'm going to try for that. And so you throw your hat in for that, and the same process. Except in that instance, there's two winners. There's the front runner who is the president, and then the second choice is the vice president. And there you actually go to Washington, and you live, or whatever the capital is. I modeled this after our government, but if it'd be a world government, and so where the seat would be, I don't know. It might move around, but that's the new world order as I see it.
I see, yeah, and well, in a perfect world, the problem is we're always going to have those power mongers who would try to fix the lottery, if you will, they make sure that their buddies, but their good old pals, get those notices.
Yes.
We'd have to keep a sharp eye. We would need alien technology to keep an eye on these
There you
people.
go. And that's exactly why they were creating the hybrids. The hybrids have certain features. They're human and everything, but maybe they have an extra sharp ability to communicate with people and convince people just because they're good communicators. And maybe there's other features that they have that will get them to high levels in society to where they actually could be selected into the new government. And these people, these hybrids, are not self-serving. They're there for the good of the many, basically. And so they would be willing to change the form of government to the one I just described.
Yeah. And again, it would, getting rid of all the evil. Upgrade even. That would do. Currently the way this planet is now and the people on it. Yeah. I feel like we're so far away from where we need to be to be a part of that galactic federation, if you will. We've got a lot of growing up to do, I guess.
Yeah. So now you know why the aliens don't land on the White House.
Well, I would, if I was an alien, that'd be the last place I'd land. You'd probably sure get shot at. And they know that. But you know what? They have obviously the technology to shut down anything they'd like. They've shut down missiles. They've shut down, I've heard the stories.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of evidence that they really don't mean us harm, that they're actually trying to protect us from ourselves.
Well, right. And that's the golden headline there. Is just, if they wanted to get us, I had a guy, I bring him up often because it's for so many years he would write me and tell me, I'm telling you, the extraterrestrials are going to eat us, we're their food. And I'm thinking, no, it's just, why wait? There's 8 billion snacks running around here now. Aren't you hungry? You've been sitting around watching they're abducting people and eating them. Well, no, Travis came back. They didn't eat him. So, I don't believe that. I don't think they're here to harm us. I think we're more of an experiment than anything else, maybe.
And that's where this idea of a galactic federation rule that says you got to observe but hands off, because if you try and mold them into your own image, then you're destroying diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. So somebody asked, what are your thoughts then on the future of the truth embargo? We going places with this?
Well, I think they're gonna, frankly, I think they have all the information they need, and they have all the brain power they need. In fact, I think they've already developed the technology that a lot of people think that half the UFOs people see are our own craft. That's just, there's no evidence for that, but it's certainly possible. I guess when I was asked earlier, like a couple of weeks ago, when this announcement came out, and people were asking me, well, what do you think? And I said, well, the reason for them keeping it secret hasn't changed. And
Yeah.
in my opinion, they're going to keep it a secret as best they can. And maybe by just saying, well, we're doing our research and we're getting the best minds on it, so we're not ready to tell you what it is yet. So just hang in there, and maybe before you die, we'll tell you. Who knows?
Well, and this is what kicks my butt, though, with these extraterrestrials, especially. Like back in biblical times, they had no problem, making contact, I guess. People seeing them, there are lots of accounts of this stuff. And now here we are now. And it's like, I mean, have we gotten too smart that they don't want us to see them? Or, I mean, I get it that we're violent and all, but let's face it, sometimes they appear in the sky to certain people, to certain crowds of people, certain cities. I mean, they've flown over. I've had visuals in the sky of not just lights in the sky, but craft that was unbelievably brilliant and intelligent, and it was definitely not our military.
We've been fortunate.
Yeah, and so it's just, why, I don't know, man. Oh man, it drives me crazy why they don't make contact with more of, like me. I mean, if they do their homework right, they'd know that I'm not going to go and jump off a cliff because they've come. ET's welcome to appear and come through my wall and talk to me, but that don't happen. And then I would wonder, why work with the government of all? I mean, that's the wrong people to be working with, personally.
Well,
I think.
So if it's a question of why don't the ETs, take the bull by the horns and just kind of introduce themselves to us? Again, I think they realize that it would be destructive.
But at the same time,
from my point of view, you talk to any congressman or anybody like that who maybe has the headquarters for Exxon in their backyard, or some other energy company, or other things that are at risk if this advanced technology is suddenly handed to us. What's going to happen?
Yeah, well, but doctor, then you look, and I mean, they have shown themselves to us. I go back to the Phoenix Lights again. There's a case where, I mean, thousands of people, and then after the news started showing it, millions of people seen this. So, I mean, and then there's been so many other sightings. I mean, we can go on and on, right? And so it's not like they're hiding themselves. They are actually showing themselves. But I don't know, we're missing the cue somewhere. I don't know what we're supposed to do with that.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. It's kind of like they're showing us them, but they don't want to get too close, because they maybe know that first thing we're going to ask them is, where do we get this free energy? And can we build a plane that'll take us from New York to London in 10 minutes? And how do we do all that stuff?
See, now
by
that...
the way, we want to know how we can live forever. We know that you guys live for thousands of years. We want to do that too. So can you do something to our genes to make that happen? I mean, all kinds of things would kind of disrupt our society in a good way. But
these would be the questions. These would be the questions of the military-industrial complex, probably. And now, my questions would be more of, do you know who we are? Do you know where we came from? Why are we here? Who's God? Tell me more about, what do you know about God? Those are the questions I think I'd ask. And death. I would definitely want to know what they know about death. And so, boy, we'd go through a few pots of coffee, me and E.T., if they came here and, and hung out with me for a little while.
Well, I happen to believe in reincarnation, and my feeling is, I'm not sure exactly what heaven's going to be like, but I think I'll get bored after a while and be ready to go into another life,
Well, that's, it's funny you say that. I tell the listeners all the time that my worst fear is that when I get to the other side, I'm bored, that it's boring, that, we're just like this piece of energy that can't do anything but float around, like, and God, I hope it's not like that, because then I will have to come back. So,
well, a couple of theories I heard is, first of all, it's a resting place, because you may have had a traumatic life.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's a time to kind of review your life, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
but apparently just tuck it away someplace, because when you go to the next life, you don't have any conscious memory of all that. So it's kind of a waste of information, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe not. Well, I guess we're all going to find out. That's the one thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's, like I said, there's two things they know for sure: pay taxes and die.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, the young guys around me sometimes say, "Oh man, Mike, I can't believe you get this age or that age," and I tell them, "You're going to get there." I mean, if you're lucky or maybe unlucky, I don't know. And that's another thing too. Some people say, I mean, I want to live as long as I can too, to see the advances or the destruction or whatever it is that comes our way. I have a father who's 90. I have an aunt who's 97, and they still, I mean, even at their age, I mean, my dad, he's got his challenges, but there's still a will to be here. They're not running to go to the other side. That's for sure.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, on my 70th birthday, I made a scientific conclusion, or drew a scientific conclusion. I said to myself, I think I'm only halfway done. So I'm going to live to 140. And people laugh at that. In fact, some people cringe because they think, 140, well, you'd be shriveled up and really look terrible. But actually, I gave a commencement speech at Penn State in 2000 when my daughter graduated.
Yeah.
And my talk was technology, past, present, and future. And what I did is I went back to 1950, and I monitored 5 technologies and come forward every 25 years. Like when your grandmother was sitting here, and then your parents were here, and then the year 2000. And one of the technologies that I tracked was medicine. And I said, 1950, the big issue was polio. And in 1975, the issue was I forget what it is. But anyway, it was a different.
There's always something, right?
Yeah. And of course, the year 2000, I can't remember even what that was. But anyway, I had actually talked to some doctors at Hershey Medical Center as I prepared for the lecture. And so I worked my way up to 2050. And I had noticed that the life extended every 25 years. People live longer. But I also knew that we were on the cusp of technologies such as genetics that would allow us to genetically tune diseases to particular persons, so it really is effective. Also, we're at a point where we can almost rebuild any part of your body using material that came from your body, so you won't reject it. And so basically, we're getting to the point where we might be able to live, and this is what I told them. I said, by 2050, your society may be faced with the dilemma of who should be allowed to die and who should be allowed to be born.
Yeah.
Because I believe there's that exponential curve, and I'm trying to ride that curve, by the way.
Yeah.
And because I would like to live to 140 because I want to see what happens.
Well, right. And, and some people tell me, I would never become a cyborg. I wouldn't let that technology become part of me. I'll tell you, if I hit my dad's age at 90 and I'm having all these health problems and things, well, why the hell not? I mean, what's the alternative? I get put in a box and buried. So why not? I mean, as long as I could keep my spirit, and my spirit's okay with hanging around a little longer, why not? I mean, if I'm at that stage, now, no. But, I mean, I get a little older and things start wearing down. Yeah, I might be interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I would worry more about my brain. If your brain doesn't work anymore, for whatever reason, then you may not realize where you are even. So what's the point?
Well, right. I mean, I look at it like the spirit has the spirit's brain is the mind, right? And it's like we connect into this brain and this physical body to power up. Kind of like the car. You put the key in and turn the key. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
We get in this body and it gets a spark of life, and here we are. And I've watched surgeries, heart surgeries, on video and stuff, and I've seen where, they'll take the heart out, they'll prep it, do all the things they have to do in a bypass. They put it back in and they give it this shock, and all of a sudden life comes back into the body. Now, what I would wonder is, where does the life force come from when they make these hybrids? Like, so this is something I would ask the extraterrestrials. I'd want to know, are the spirits actually going into these bodies, or what's powering these things? So,
Well,
million
that
questions.
is a good question, and I tried to address that too. Of course, the fortunate thing is I have aliens that can answer that.
Oh.
And well, spirits, only God creates a spirit.
Yeah. Well, right.
The maker, God creates a spirit. And then I also tried to work out what is space made of, And I'm starting to lean toward this quantum wave theory, where there really aren't particles. There are different waves of different types of energy, like gravity and electric and magnetic and other things that are constantly undulating. And where the waves peak together is what we would call a particle, like an electron or something.
Yeah.
And so everything is in waves. And so, because I hear other people talk about frequency, your frequency isn't right. I don't know what that means exactly. But I'm thinking, okay, because I've been wondering, at what point does the spirit, first of all, I don't even know where it goes. Is it in my head or in my heart, or where does it go? Or is it all around my body? If I cut my finger off, do I lose part of my spirit? I don't think so. And I was actually having that discussion with my 13-year-old grandson, and we didn't come to a conclusion exactly where, because I said, well, if you lose an arm, did you lose your spirit? No. What about if you lose your head? Well, that's probably it. That's gone.
Yeah. Well, doctor, we were just talking about that today, as a matter of fact, and we were talking about how, like, I had a tooth pulled a while back, and sometimes I get what I call a phantom toothache, where it feels like the tooth is still there. I've talked to people who've lost limbs, and they say that sometimes it feels like it's still there, like they don't have a foot, but they have a sore foot. So I think when you lose it in the physical, I think the spiritual is still there. It's still, that spiritual leg is still hanging around. Anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, that's all right, because that's a complicated issue, and it leads to a lot of questions, like when does a human spirit, enter a fetus? At what stage of development?
Yeah.
And some people would say, when the fetus has the right frequency that it can support the spirit, then the spirit enters the human fetus.
I've heard a heartbeat.
At that point, it's a human.
Yeah, I've heard people say, well, when it develops a heartbeat, which is very early. Yeah, and so, but when does it? That's one of the big debates. The fact is it does. And so, I'm one of those people who, I think, well, I don't want to get into the whole abortion thing, but, I wonder if there's some consequences there, because if it's really God putting that spark of life in, who are we to mess with that? Just like we got madmen now who are messing with this stuff. But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's all right. That leads to another issue that's kind of a current issue today.
Yeah.
When at one point in my life, I was, because I was an engineer, I was the property chairman for a pretty large church. It was like a cathedral almost. And so I was in charge of the sexton. And one day he came up to me, and I won't tell you what his name, I'll just say his name was Andy. That's not his name, but
okay.
He said, I'm going to be gone for about 3 weeks. And I said, oh, well, where are you going? Well, then when I come back, I won't be Andy anymore. I'll be Janet.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And so he explained to me, he was a married man, and he said, all my life I've been wrestling with this problem. I'm in the wrong body, and I'm finally going to do something about it. So that brings up the question, well, who's to say that when the spirit enters the body, that maybe once in a while it enters the wrong type of body, that it's a female spirit going into a male body, or vice versa. I mean, is that possible?
I've brought that up before, actually. It's interesting. Boy, we think alike. That's scary because I've thought about that too. I brought that up, and of course, the person I was talking to about it didn't want to hear it. But it's not like I'm defending the whole thing, but I'm saying, why can't there be mistakes? So I can't.
Exactly.
Yeah. Why, oops, got on the wrong bus. Oops, got on the wrong body.
Yeah, and I think that's because from a biblical point of view, people see it's a sin. I don't know, but when you just think about logically what could happen and how, first of all, we don't really understand the process to begin with, so we're guessing at the whole thing.
Yeah.
But it would seem possible that could be an explanation. And when this guy told me that he had wrestled with that all his life, that he felt he was in the wrong body, and I think people who do a sex change actually go through that same process. They come to the conclusion that they're just in the wrong body.
Yeah.
And to me, I feel sorry for them because it's not the easy thing to live with. But I don't see them as being evil or anything like that.
No, I don't either. I do see anybody who pushes an adult agenda, and let's face it, when it comes to gender and it comes to even the whole gay thing and such, I mean, we're talking about sexual preference basically for most of it. And so that's when I have a problem when that's presented to our children. Children don't care about all the sex and all that stuff. So we should leave them alone with it. I mean, it is an adult issue. I feel like it should remain an adult issue. And so that's where I have the problem. Like when they push it, on these kids shows and stuff, I don't feel like they should do that because, their minds are developing and I think they're fragile. But for people who are going through that, I'm with you. I feel sorry for them too. It's got to be a horrible thing to not be comfortable with who you are.
Yeah.
So.
But one of the things that's fortunate in our day and age in our society, and it's not worldwide, unfortunately, but in our society now, people can kind of dream of doing anything they want. I mean, girls can think about being engineers or astronauts, and if you go back 50 years ago, that was a man's world. Even being an engineer was a tough thing for a woman to even think about doing.
Right.
But today, it's wide open, and that's good.
It is good. I've always been one to say I don't care who you are or what you are. If you can do the job, go for it. Do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't think anyone should be held back for any of those reasons. And these are the things we need to get by in order to be part of that, as you called it, the Galactic Federation. As we are now, we're too petty. I mean, E.T. would constantly be looking back in the back seat saying, well, you kids cut it out. I'm going to ground you again, Yeah. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? So crazy. Hey, let me take one more break here, and then you and I will come back and we'll finish up a couple more questions maybe, and I'll give you the floor to get out anything else that you'd like when we return. Folks, a really interesting conversation tonight with a really interesting guest. He is Dr. Robert E. Farrell. Make sure you go check out his website. It's linked up over on latenightinthemidlands.com, alienlog.com, and when we come back, he can give you any other information that he'd like. He is, again, Dr. Robert E. Farrell. I'm Michael Vara. This is Late Night in the Midlands. We will be right back. We are on the L&M train, baby, and we're getting to the end of the track here. We'll be right back. I mean, it could be anything you could think of. I'm telling you, I've learned that if you could think about it, it's possible. I'm guessing that somewhere out in that universe, there's little insects little human insects. Like we are a pain in somebody's butt somewhere in the universe outside of right here on this earth. But there's probably a duplicate of me somewhere crawling on a kitchen wall somewhere and somebody trying to swat me. What do you think, Doctor? You think, we hear about the praying mantis extraterrestrials, and we have praying mantis on this planet. I've heard of ant people and all kinds of stuff. So why not human? A little bit of everything everywhere, huh?
Yeah, I guess I don't think there's a limit as to what form our spirit can inhabit.
Yeah.
In fact, while you were on break, I was rethinking this question of where our spirit resides, and I've come to the conclusion it isn't our heart, because some people have heart transplants, which would mean they lose their spirit.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be in your head someplace. And also, I've been thinking about this question of when a fetus is could be classified as human. I know you mentioned heartbeat, and I think that's the easiest way to come to, if you had to measure something, that's
Sure.
something you can detect. But I think it really should be when there's signs of awareness. Not necessarily the heartbeat, but the signs of awareness, and I don't know how you measure that.
Where would it reside? I mean, certainly the heart's important, but the brain's important too. Now, the brain can function without the heart if it's taken out of the body, right? I mean, there's got other ways of keeping that baby going. Some say that maybe the spirit is within the blood because the blood is so special. I don't know, but that could be spilled on the ground, and then what?
People have their blood changed out for some reason periodically.
Yeah.
People have to have their, they go on, if they have kidney problems and things like that, but dialysis. But I don't know, and so it's still an open question where it is.
Yeah.
I think it's in the fifth dimension, and maybe the fifth dimension doesn't specify a physical location for it. It's just there somehow.
Well, right, and of course we can't explain these things because, we don't. I mean, we can't even begin to think like God. I'm sure whoever that, and I don't look at God as a man checking a box or any of that stuff. It's just everything that is. It's just this creative energy, whatever the heck it is. I hope to know one day. I mean, people will say, "Well, read the Bible," and okay, that's great, and it is, it's helpful. But for me, my mind goes deeper than that. I just want solid evidence, proof of everything. And people say, "Well, look at everything that is." Well, yes, that is evidence of a creator, but who or what is that creator?
Well. Yeah, in my second novel, The Alien Log 2, there is another discussion between a human and an alien about that question. And the alien says that their scientists had proven the existence of the creator mathematically. And actually, I wouldn't have put that in the book if I hadn't read about that myself.
Yeah.
Someone actually did a doctoral thesis where he went through a mathematical proof that there had to be a creator, because the universe could never have gotten where it is or even existed accidentally or by chance. It required a creator.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, the aliens know that there is a creator.
And I'm not down with that whole Big Bang theory. I always say, what good has ever come out of something exploding? Not much usually. I think it's more sophisticated than that. We put our human minds to it, and we try to put it in an earthly sense. And rather than, we can't possibly think unless you could really get out there. People, I think I can, but I bet you it's more crazier than even I can think,
I don't know. I think when we really learn about everything, that it's going to turn out to be pretty simple.
Yeah, simple, stupid.
It'll really be a simple answer. And like you mentioned the Big Bang, I happen to not believe in the Big Bang. I think it's wrong.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm about to finish the book, The Science Behind Creation of Our Universe Without a Big Bang, because there's an alternative theory that makes a lot more sense, does not violate the laws of physics, does not require this bogus, mysterious dark energy. There is no such thing as dark energy. The universe does what it's doing for a reason, and it's following the laws of physics that we know. And that's another story, and that's going to be another book.
Yeah, yeah, it just, when I look out into space and I look at videos and pictures or what have you, or even with telescope, and I see these planets just sitting out there, just floating out there, it's just so hard for me to grasp that there's this, I understand gravity, but it's just amazing how it all just stays where it needs to be. Everything is in the right where it needs to be for everything to function the way it does. It's incredible. I mean, yeah. I mean, you want a proof of a creator. I mean, there was intelligence that went into all this. This wasn't, I mean, it wasn't like some boy threw magic beans on the ground and the stock grew. It didn't work that way. I mean, this is, they talk about the most sophisticated machine, and they say the human body, and I don't know about that. I think the universe this is all created. So when you think of creation, I mean, you got to think of everything, and everything, including stuff we don't even know about yet. I feel like we're missing out too, because we only get so many years on this, in this meat suit, right? And I keep calling it a meat suit because I got a friend who that's what he refers to it as, and I find it disgusting and yet funny. So we only get so much time, and think about all the people who passed on before us who never got these answers, and we're probably going to be statistics right along with them.
I keep saying, when things are backwards, just about the time you really get good, you die.
Yeah, isn't that not? This is yes.
That's backwards. Yeah, it shouldn't be that way.
It is. You spend most of your life making mistakes, tripping over yourself, doing all these things. You finally get to a point where you understand who you are, what your purpose is, at least you feel like you do. You get your career, all that stuff comes together, and then it's, health problems, and, you're getting older and you're out. It's like before you know it, blink of an eye, it's over with.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But I really believe that we are getting closer to having a handle on aging and longevity, and some researchers have even been able to take cells from, they were like twin frogs, and inject one of them with some magic juice, I don't know, and its organs actually showed signs of getting younger. So not only are they going to find out more about the aging process and be able to halt that process, I don't know if they could ever reverse it. It's kind of strange to think they could make me all of a sudden become 25 years old. But anyway, maybe they will. I don't know.
Well, they could make you certainly function like you're 25 years old, I bet you. At some point, I mean, we're all chemistry, so I think anything's possible.
And so that's why I told the students who were graduating that in 2050 we might be there, where maybe I won't be, but maybe my grandson or his children will have a life expectancy of like in the Bible, 900 years. When I tell people, and I talk about that in the science behind Noah's flood, that like Noah lived to be 950 years old, Methuselah to 969 years old, and so if you look at what happened after the deluge or the flood, life expectancy began decreasing.
Yeah,
and so. In one of the mythology stories, the gods were so. First of all, the gods who created humankind in the myth, they created humans originally with the ability to reproduce, but without the aging, and so people lived a long time and they reproduced all the while. And they could be 900 years old and be new parents, and so the population really grew. And so one theory in the mythology is that the gods became concerned about that. And so they decided, when they found out that there was going to be this tragic flood, they said, well, we don't want to have blood on our hands, so let's just don't say anything and let nature take its course, and they'll all drown and we'll start over again, something like that.
Yeah.
And that was Noah's flood.
Right, and so I would love, hell, I don't even need 900. Give me 500 years. Can you imagine where we're going to be 500 years from now if we don't blow ourselves up first?
I know it.
Man, I want to be a part of
live to
that.
140. The problem is I'll be broke when I'm 100. So what am I going to do?
Well, yeah, but if they can get you the body working like a young man again, boy, there's no time. I mean, boy, if I can have a few hundred years to do what I'm doing, I mean, imagine what you can build in that amount of time.
Well, imagine how wise those people were back then. And people have told me, well, those years are not real years; they're Bible years or something. And in fact, someone I know said, well, those are months. They were talking about months. So anyway, so what happened that night, I went back and there was a Bible in my room where I rented, and I read the Bible in Genesis, and then the next day I met the same person. I said, I was reading in the Bible that there were people who, when they were 35, were fathers, became fathers.
Yeah.
Now, if those are 35 months, they were only 3 years old. So that doesn't work. I think they really lived to be 900 years old. I really do.
And there you go. And that is why people need to read this stuff themselves and come up with their own determinations of what this stuff means, because all too often we have somebody else interpreting to us what something means, and we don't even bother to go look and try to understand it because, well, Joe explained it to me, so that's good enough. Well,
Yeah.
Joe told you what he thinks. How about you? Now, look, you went ahead and you did that, and because of that, you're a wiser man today. See? Really?
Well,
yeah.
I would hope so. I try to be.
Well, yeah. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't have known that, right? I mean, somebody would have told you
It's like
months, and you would
I
have.
told you about the frog.
Yeah.
I'm 81 years old, and I only learned about 6 months ago that a frog could breathe underwater.
Doesn't that just amaze you?
And everybody that I've asked the question, I said, "Did you know the frogs could breathe underwater?" And nobody else knows that either.
Yeah, I'm amazed by things too. I mean, you think you know it all, and you just know you don't.
Yeah.
There's so much to learn yet, and I tell you, the older you get, the more you love learning too.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I couldn't stand it. Now I love it. I can't get enough.
Yeah. And the opportunities are so great today with YouTube. I mean, I'm learning things about physics, and I have a PhD in engineering, but some of the physics and stuff, and there's just so much you can get on YouTube and other channels. It's amazing. It really is. You just could never. I don't know how we managed back when I was a kid, because all we had was books to read.
Oh, I know. I remember we had to go to the library, and as a kid, you were only into so much of that, and basically we had teachers and adults who would tell us about stories and tell us things, and we take their word for it for the most part, like in school. They'd give us the textbooks put together the way they put them together, and rather than us getting out and experiencing these things and learning for ourselves. But so I always tell people, go do your own research. Don't just read one book and say, well, now I know. Because no, there's so much out there, and when it comes to who we are and where we're going, those are like the biggest questions. How did we get here, and where in the heck are we going when this body quits? Everybody should be interested in these questions. I mean, we're all going. I mean, I joke around. I say the only people who ever get off this planet with their bodies are astronauts, and I'm no astronaut. So, and even them, eventually they have to check out too. So I want to know what it's all about. And I don't know as though we're going to ever be allowed to know too much about that, because it might be too much of an interference for us. So.
Yeah. Maybe you can't handle the truth.
Well, I don't think I probably couldn't in that case. If I found out that I had unfinished business in a last life or something, boy, would that interfere. Or if you found out that it's so much better on the other side. Now, me, I don't have the cojones. I wouldn't take myself out. But there's a lot of people who would if they knew it was better.
Well, that was another discussion that an alien had with a human. Because they were talking about free will, and the human says, "Well, so we all are given free will. Then if you want to commit suicide, that's your own free will to do that. And the alien said, well, that's the reason you shouldn't do that is because you would lose out on the life experiences that you were supposed to have, and you're cutting that short.
Yeah.
That's why it's wrong to commit suicide.
Well, that's just like cutting class. If you don't finish school, you don't get the diploma.
Yeah.
You've got to finish. Yeah. And I think it's, when we decide if we want to go on further with our education, right? After we reach the requirement of the grades we have to, 12th grade, right? And then if you want to go on further and go to college, you do that. Maybe that's how. Maybe once we get our certain amount of lessons we're supposed to have, then we could decide if we want to further our education. Maybe those are some of the geniuses that we, come across every now and then. Your Einsteins and people, these folks who have huge IQs because they've lived so many lives, maybe.
Yeah. So in fact, you wonder if some of these, like Da Vinci and Einstein, weren't fed information. Maybe they unconsciously didn't realize it, but some of the things that they've come up with, Da Vinci especially, he was so far ahead of his time, it's hard to believe he was even human.
Yeah, well, maybe he wasn't. Maybe alien souls get mixed up in the mix sometimes, and you never know. I don't know. I'll be interested to find out when my time comes, and I hope that's not anytime soon. So you say about 2050, we might have that type of technology. I do read about it a lot. That would put me at about 81 years old. Oh boy, man. I don't know. Well, we'll see. I didn't think I'd make it this far, and I have. So.
Well, I'll tell you what. I feel like I'm 25 and I'm 81. So,
God bless. I hope that I am as blessed as you, my friend.
Well, I think age is part of your mind. How you feel in your mind.
It is. Occasionally, a sore knee will remind you of some things, though.
Well, yeah. I have to talk to my body every now and then and tell it how much I love it and keep on doing it,
Yeah, maybe put it on ice once in a while, Well, listen, before we finish up here, I want to give you the floor to get out anything else that you like. I have really enjoyed catching up with you tonight, and I would like to do this again in the near future.
Sure.
Not 9 years. Let's not wait that long.
I know. It was when I got your email, was it, or something?
Yeah.
And you listed the last time. Maybe you didn't know it, but you listed the last time we talked, and I think it was 2012. And I said, wow. But then I remembered that was about the time I came out with the first edition of the Science Behind Alien Encounters. And ironically, and I think I mentioned that to you, I was just on the verge of releasing the second edition of that same book. And so this is the platform for it. And I think I told you that starting tonight, for the next 5 days, if people go to Amazon, they can download the ebook, The Science Behind Alien Encounters, for free.
Oh, nice.
Until Friday. And so it doesn't cost them anything if they want to check it out. And some of the things that we talked about tonight are in that book, in more detail, though. But, I'm on a mission. As we started off this discussion, you asked me why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I can't tell you why I'm doing it. I feel like it's a mission. I hate to kind of relate to John the Baptist type of mission, but I really feel that I have a purpose to try and enlighten people, to get them, make them aware of reality and open their minds.
Yeah. That's what it's about. That's what it's about, expanding the mind. I want people to get outside the box what they're thinking. They have to. There's so much more out there. We get so tied up in the politics and all these things that they're just so distracting to what we're really here to learn. I mean, when you die, when you go to the other side, you're not going to bring your politics with you. I have a feeling that stuff is just not going to matter over there, and it does matter here, but it doesn't matter over there, and so it shouldn't make it your all priority. And there's so much more. Man, I go outside, I look up at that sky, that night sky, and I see all that stuff up there, And it's just, there's so much to learn. And
There is. Yeah.
mustn't be
And
distracted by the
so
nonsense.
interesting. It really is.
Yeah, it is.
And the thing is, that everything you learn, it all has to fit together. I mean, if somebody tells you this thing and it doesn't jive with what you know about other things in reality, then something's wrong. Because in reality, it all fits together, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everything. It's all like a puzzle. Everything fits. There's a piece. All the pieces fit. You just got to find them. And that's what I try to do every night, talking to guys like you. I tell the listeners there's no way that I'd be able to do all the research that all my guests have done. And so to get folks like you who come on the show, you might have put 30, 40 years into this. And, there's no way I couldn't live long enough. I'd need that 900 years. So to have, you guys coming on the show and sharing everything you've learned with us, they're pieces to the puzzle, and I get to put those pieces together. Every night I learn something new. Like tonight, I learned that, the frogs, they got that talent. They could breathe under the water. They could breathe above water. Here, I thought they'd hold their breath for a long time. So
that's what I thought.
Yeah, little things like that. And I've learned so much more. And I thank you so much for being here. Website, your website's still the same, right?
Yeah, www.alienlog.com.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, listen, you have a great night. You be safe, and contact me anytime, anything new you want to talk about, even if it's for an hour, let me know.
Well, sometime I'd like to talk to you about how the universe was created without a Big Bang.
Oh, I'd love to get into that. All right. Well, I'll be in touch. So
okay.
We'll do that. All right. Well, you have a great night, Doctor. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
You too, and thanks for having me.
You betcha. All right. Good night. All right, folks. There he goes. I told you, great guest. I wasn't lying. I never do. I never do fib to you on that. Dr. Robert E Farrell, my guest. And his books, go check them out, www.alienlog.com. As he said, as you go on Amazon, and I'm sure you get there through his website too, you can get that, get it for free right now. And I know you guys love free. The PDF, was it the PDF or anyways, the digital version of the book. And so, folks, we're about almost out of time here. Tomorrow night, I have Dan Willis joining me. We're going to be talking about things out of this world again tomorrow night. And that seems to be the theme this week. Thursday, I'll be kind of open with current events and stuff I'll be going over. Friday, I have, we're going to be talking with Michael Horn. And he's going to update us on the Billy Meyer story and all that good stuff. So, it's a UFO extraterrestrial themed week. And I did that purposely because the report was supposed to be coming out. And like he said, what report? They didn't tell us anything new. They didn't give us anything we can hang our hat on. I know more than what that report has put out there. My guest knows a hell of a lot more than what that report's put out there, and we've shared a lot of it with you tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. You scratch my back, that is keep us on the air, and I'll scratch yours, that is bringing you the best guest with the best information. I thank you all for tuning in tonight. I ask that you keep your eyes posted to the sky because you really never know what you might see. Keep your ears posted to this broadcast because, well, you never know what you might learn. And it wouldn't figure right at the end of the show, the videos start working again. The frames anyways. You've been hearing me, you just haven't been seeing me. And maybe that's a good thing. Anyways, I'll be back with you tomorrow night. God, universe, whatever willing. Have a great night. Good night, everybody.
Become a late nighter tonight. What is a late nighter? A late nighter is a loyal listener who wants access to the LNM radio show's archives and wants to contribute to the show's growth with an annual or monthly listener contribution. Late nighters get special discount codes for LNM swag, a PDF copy of MV's book, Lessons from the Other Side. Become an annual late nighter and get all the above, plus a copy of MV's Crazy Melodies album. Just click one of the Become a Late Nighter buttons all over latenightinthemidlands.com to subscribe.
Hey late nighters, keep up with all things LNM Radio by joining our mailing list. Just go to the bottom of the homepage and fill in the Stay Informed form. Then click the Get Latest News button. You will get everything from guest info and show info and other important station-related information. So sign up now and get a special promo offer just for email subscribers.
Hi, folks. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the L&M website fundraiser. I'm looking to have the website professionally done once and for all. However, it's going to cost about $3,600 to make it happen. It is basically L&M Radio storefront. And let's face it, guys and gals, it needs some work. I have a professional team at GoDaddy ready to tackle this job and do it right once and for all. The one thing stopping me is money, folks. If anyone could donate $500 or more to this project, I will place your name or your business or your product on the website for as long as Late Night in the Midlands and this website is alive.